Well, welcome to the November 24th open discussion meeting of the Mississippi PowerShell User Group. Now, unfortunately, this recording is missing about the first 10 or 15 minutes since we forgot to start the recording. But we did remember to record the rest of it. Enjoy.
Just like half the other knuckleheads that I talked to, he's like, I don't know if I have anything worthwhile. And then we talked to him and he's got like level 400, whatever you want to call them, talks that are all awesome on their own. And we're like, what are you talking about? Nobody thinks they have anything good to share when you talk to them.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize, everyone. I only just started the recording. That's on me. Again. It's not like last time. Last time I forgot to hit record, it was for the entire meeting. I went to go download the video file after the fact, and I was like, oh, I forgot to hit record. Fantastic. I have to tape a big note to my monitor next time.
You can get you one of those at some point, one of those little things like I see some of these podcasts, these people that do these serious things like Chrissy Lemaire, some of these serious recorders got the little extra buttons. You have a big old record button. You just punch that button. I sit and look at the hardware they've got, the microphones. And it's just wow.
Yeah, the microphone is the essential piece, I think. If you don't have good audio quality,
It's not really as expensive as you think. I mean, most of them are doing it with a decent mic that's probably $100 or less for most people. And I mean, almost all the webcams now are 1080p. Some are higher. And there's not much else you need. I mean, there's definitely upgrades from there, but there's not much else you need. I know a lot of them are using OBS and they have like hot start buttons for stuff. I have thought about doing video, but I can't even keep up with the stuff I say I'm going to do now. Although I'd like to do video, but
yeah, there's Jeff Geerling. He does Ansible, and I've watched a lot of his videos, and he's got some more set up, several cameras and nice mic, burning that Mac up doing those videos.
Well, if you're looking for a casual, to do the occasional video, just should head over to TechSnips and give that a check out, because I mean that's a fairly easy going. You record your video and somebody else does the editing and publishing.
Yeah, I've watched quite a few of those. That was
are they still publishing?
Sorry?
Are they still publishing new content to TechSnips?
Yeah, a little bit slow, like one a month. I keep saying, that I'm going to do one or two a week, but I never get around to it. But they're still publishing content. It's about one a month or so.
That was my first exposure to Docker. The guy had a video on there installing and running Docker.
Yeah, on my laptop I messed up, and I guess through one of the upgrades, my NuGet server Docker image was toast, which was okay because that's how containers are supposed to work. And I had to go basically run it, get the new one. So whenever I publish a module to the PowerShell gallery, I publish it first to my local NuGet, which is running on Docker. Just to make sure that the publishing works, and then I can download it and things like that. But anyway, yeah, Docker's pretty cool.
I just dropped a link for the TechSnips sign-up page, if anyone's interested. Well, Dave, you're on the list of contributors, aren't you?
No, No, I've not anything for tech snips.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, sorry. Yes, it's probably we have too many Daves.
You were talking earlier about the guy that had all the hardware at home. I just got the email. Oh, over the last couple of days, I've got an email that says my Pi 400 is shipped, and then another one that said my DC64 is going to be shipping, and I think I might get it in like December 3rd. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm gonna have like a couple of pretty much single board computers that is housed in a keyboard. Just going to be kind of neat. One's like a full-time C64 VIC-20 emulator, and the other one I could emulate whatever I want to.
I like the unit that it was on some site that it's got it's a Raspberry Pi 4 shoved inside of a keyboard.
Yeah,
it's got the dual HDMI's.
Yeah, I think that's the Pi 400.
Yeah, that would be nice to have one of those at times. Very convenient, hook up to a TV or otherwise. But I'm amazed at seeing these guys. They're taking and buying 8 of these Raspberry Pis. You getting somebody to or either they have a 3D printer and building this big old bracket, and then they have all those in there and the heat sinks all tied in it, keeping it cool, and they're running this giant, that's it, giant Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah.
Well, but, not a giant one, but a Kubernetes cluster on little Raspberry Pi 4s.
Doesn't Steve do that? Like he has like a little stack of Pis that he runs some kind of cluster on, I believe. Steve
there's several of them doing it.
Yeah. So in Teams, how can I get the is everybody doing video, or is just Mike? Are you still doing video or no? I guess because I'm not sure.
Looks like it's just you and me.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's working as intended then. Like I know the Teams is supposed to handle like 47,000.
Yeah. It'll look like the Brady Bunch if multiple people have their videos on, but
I thought it'd be kind of sweet if we could like do this and do this and look at each other.
I'm actually doing a late night deployment, so I'm kind of multitasking in the background here tonight. I apologize.
No worries.
Work never stops.
Sometimes it's nice to hang out with your like-minded peers.
Mr. Kanakos, ever since the security talk, I have had very little sleep because I've been playing on Posh Hunter and Under the Wire. I blame you.
Justin, did you get your audio issues figured out?
Yeah, I should. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Excellent.
I have a camera, but I'm gonna be over here because my partner and I are playing a bunch of Satisfactory tonight, building big old crazy factories.
I was digging around in the closet looking for something the other day and ran across my old PT109 game. I don't have a 5 1/4 floppy drive to run it from anymore.
I still have the drive. I just need a controller.
Yeah.
That's the tough part, is trying to find a controller for just a floppy controller. I'm kind of keep trying to look for a PCI one, but I can't find one anywhere.
I don't know.
I got to chase a kid to bed. I might not be back for a while.
All right.
See you a little later.
Good luck.
I don't know why I kept it, but I still have, when my first computer was a Commodore 64, and then I had an IBM XT clone, 10 megahertz with a mega memory. And my first hard drive was an internal one that, I had a 20 meg, and then I got a hold of a used plus hard card. And that's this full length board that has a regular standard size hard drive on the end of it. It would plug into a slot. That thing's still sitting in the closet. I don't know why I want to get it, because just get rid of it, because it's just a piece of history. It's not like it's valuable or anything, but I thought that was cool when I went back then.
I had an old Quadro Mac that when I was a kid, and spent a bunch of money and got this. It was a full Intel PC on a PCI card that could go into a Mac, and it was sort of like WSL in reverse in a way, and that you'd be in your old Mac, like a Mac LC3 or a Mac Quadro, and you put this giant board inside, and then you could get a terminal on a PC. It was quite the engineering feat. If you think about it, even today, I'm sure there was a market for it outside of just me, but it was quite something. They weren't that expensive either, as I recall. They weren't cheap, but they weren't outrageous either for what they were.
Didn't the Apple IIgs have an onboard Apple IIe card that essentially emulated the Apple IIe? I think. I never had the 2GS. I had a 2C, and I longed and pined for the 2GS because it was so much better. It was in color. It was kind of nice, but yeah. And I never really got into Amiga. I guess once I did the Commodore 64, it was the Apple IIc, and then it was like a laptop. Yeah.
My favorite was Bob Ehlers he was a he had a PhD in physics. He's self-taught on electronics, and he when they moved here from Arizona, he opened up a computer store, and he used to have the Atari STs, the 520 and 1040. Those things were awesome. I mean, they were ahead of their time. And then we got the IBM PC.
Chandra, I didn't push the F5 because I saw your email saying that it was delayed for 30 minutes, but it's been updated now. I'm just waiting there are some connections that were active on the O2 box.
Kim's not muted. Clem's not muted. But that the Atari 520 and 1040 were awesome computers running Motorola chips, and then IBM gave us DOS and the XT. And sadly, everything went downhill from there.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of right before, I guess maybe for December or so of last year, I found out about the C64, and then I started watching a lot of retro computing on that, and so I guess I got the retro computing bug, and I've been I got an Atari that I've got a video mod that I haven't put in yet. I built up my electronics tools from nothing. I've done a little bit of soldering like this guy, but it doesn't work. It looks nice, but it doesn't work. And they sent me another one of those kits. It's like $10 or something, and I just haven't gone through and done that yet. But yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of relive some of the
glory days.
Yeah. It's I remember in high school working with my 2C and Beagle Brothers software, the disk editor and stuff like that. One of my my algebra trig teacher, actually I was with trig and geometry teacher. He was a retired double E from I think he retired from AT&T. but he was or Bell South at the time. Anyway, we hung out with him a bit. He played D&D and actually ran a campaign for us. But he was also like this electronics super genius, and he had his laser 128 and he cut a hole in the chassis so he could see what sector that the disk head was reading from, and he was able to basically reverse engineer Infocom's Infologic or whatever, for Zork, which was kind of neat. He showed me how to go in and do the edits and where to do the edits, and I would like change the sword to a loaf of bread or whatever. It was cool.
So I'll ask the question that old Jeff asked: who's doing anything new with PowerShell?
Well, you kind of know what I've been doing.
Yeah. Bluebird.
Yeah, where did we?
I've been building a bunch of Azure static web apps lately with learning how to do Blazor WebAssembly and using both Azure Functions C# and Azure Functions PowerShell in the back end. There's also that cool new Thanksgiving, like the Thanksgiving serverless challenges that are kind of neat. Let me see if I can find them.
Well, that does sound kind of cool.
And I know like a couple other people are doing those in Power. Yeah, the Seasons of Serverless. And I know a couple other people are also like submitting PowerShell examples of those. So the first one's kind of interesting. If you kind of want to learn Azure Functions, you can see how to make like a turkey recipe calculator, basically. Like really simple. But
Are you putting that? Hey, Justin, are you putting that in the chat?
yeah, I'm
curious to see
down
that.
There it is.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Cool.
Dave, did you write pester tests? That's the thing I'm still trying to. I'm not a programmer.
And there's a Brett's example that was done in PowerShell for that first challenge.
I'm not a programmer by nature. I'm an administrator, systems engineer, whatever you want to call me. But I want to do more, and I'm just trying to totally wrap my head around doing the pester test.
So I mean, one easy way to learn pester tests is, again, they're just scripts, and you can use them like if you're an administrator, use them to test infrastructure. You can make a script that like pings a server and says should be up, kind of thing.
We run Epic EMR, and I actually did infrastructure tests that actually tested hyperspace servers at the time and checked their response, because I knew the call to make to it to test it, and I did that with Pester, and it was great. That's one of the first things I did. Just trying to get into all the mocking and the functions.
Yeah. So like, is there something about mocking that really trips you up, or?
No, it's just I need to sit down and do it more.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one way to really learn it is do that sort of test-driven development thing where you write the test first for like what you want it to look like, and then you write the program to match it. Have you ever done the PS cones thing?
No, but I've been thinking about trying it because I said
if you want to learn pester, that's the way to do it, because all it is a bunch of pester tests for a lot of different PowerShell concepts. So it's a way to learn. It's a way to learn PowerShell by passing pester tests, basically. So you can both see the pester test that you need to pass, and then they show you how to fix it. Definitely, like, check that out. Just start going through some of the PS cones. And you'll learn both you'll learn pester, and I've been doing PowerShell a decade. I learned all kinds of stuff in that I didn't know from doing PS cones. I was like, oh, that's a neat trick. I didn't know you could do that.
Do you know if they're rewriting that for Pester 5? Because the original PS cones was Pester 4.
I don't know. I think it might still be 4. Let me look.
I mean, that would just be one caveat to kind of keep in the back of your mind. I agree. I've done some of them. I've been kind of anxiously watching to see if they're going to do any sort of a PS Cones version 2.0 with Pester 5, but I haven't seen it yet.
it might not necessarily, like the new stuff in Pastor 5 may not impact how they're using it in PS Cones.
Looks like in September they already migrated everything to version 5 in the beta. They just haven't released it yet.
So they're already on top of it.
Yeah.
Joel's pretty slick.
Pretty significant breaking changes in 5.
Yeah, I mean 5 for good reasons, but yeah, I mean like the biggest thing in 5 is just knowing that any code that used to have outside your it or describe statements now have to be in before each or before all statements. And the reason for that being is that they rewrote it so that it makes it a lot easier to like dynamically generate statements. So you can do a for each loop around an its statement and build a whole bunch of them. Or you can do all kinds of different dynamic discoveries for making tests. But the catch there being is that what used to work where you could just put variables that would hold state outside an its statement, you can't do that anymore because they now define them as their own separate scopes. But basically all you get to do is add the before each or before whatever you had, you need before each or before all. And there actually is, if you go to the Pester site, there's an article about converting from 4 to 5 that lists all those. And there's also actually a script that will convert most tests and automatically upgrade them from 4 to 5. Worked pretty well in my case. It fixed about 85% of my tests, except for the really crazy ones. Oh, let me see if I can find that and I'll post it here.
One of the questions, or one of the things that I kind of struggled with was, so like with the Bluebird module and another API module that I have, I've got a private function that actually does the API calls. And I don't know how to necessarily do the mock for that or how to even test that itself. Because I know like everything that's local that is not going to run out and touch an outside resource should be in a unit test, and anything that touches the resource needs to be an integration test, right?
Pretty much. I mean, does it need to be, well, that's a different argument, but that's sort of the philosophy, yeah. So like if you have something that's external like that, typically what I do is that like if I'm working against an API, I need to mock an API. What I'll do is that I will take I'll run the query against the API once and then dump it to a CLI XML file, which will go in my folder. And then my mock is just simply importing that CLI XML file so that I basically get the same object representation. And now I can test and mock against it without actually calling it. I actually wrote, in my GIS, I wrote a PowerShell script called AutoMock, which will sit there. You can define certain commands, and it'll automatically generate proxy commands that every time those commands are called, it'll automatically intercept the command, do the API call, get a mock back, and then save it in a database. And then you run it in different modes. You can run it in a record mode, and then you can run it in a replay mode. So you can run your tests in a record mode, and it will just do your normal test, call your APIs, that kind of thing. But then when you run it in retest mode, it has pre-cached all those and will just return them. And if your test tries to call something that wasn't cached, it'll throw an error. I had to do that because I inherited this crazy Exchange script that made, like 15,000 calls to Exchange that were all different. So mocking it would have been a complete nightmare. So I just wrote a script that automated the mocking process.
Is that in your GIST?
Yeah, it is. I'll throw it up here real quick. I can't say that it's like the most user-friendly thing in the world, but you can get the idea of how it works just by looking at it.
Well, you get just the gist of it, right?
You can get the gist, yeah. So in there is like a demo. It also includes, I've included in there a demo I forgot that shows like how it works. But it's kind of nice. Like if you're doing a lot of like complex API calls, it basically, gets all the output as well as watches what you sent over the pipeline or what parameters you used and just generates a hash to use for the comparison. So basically you can look at the command based on whatever you piped to it as well as its command parameters. And then if all that matches what's in the database, it'll just return what's in the database. And by database, I mean just a light DB database locally on the system. Although this might be my older one where it just saves it in a static file, I think. Later, for performance, I had it starting to save it into a compressed SQLite database because that started to get crazy. But it's all in PowerShell. There's no C# in there, so. It's not horribly complicated. It basically just generates proxy commands, and then instead of doing the proxy command, it runs the proxy command and then saves the information about it.
You have to give that a spin.
Yeah.
But that's for like real serious stuff. I mean, most of the time, what I do, I only really use this in that project. Most of the time, I'll just call the API and then do an export CLI XML to get a representative object of what that API should be, and then do all the other tests on my code around that. The other thing you can do is like, if you're looking for a very specific like property or something, you don't need a really complex thing. You can just build a PS custom object to return, and it may not have all the properties. It may not be the same type, but if you're not comparing against the type, or you're not comparing out against anything but one or two properties, you don't have to have the entire contents of the object. So that's another easy way. It's like, yeah, you return an object, and Pester has an option for new mock object where it'll also mock the type of the object, so you can compare against type if you want. But what it does is make a PS custom object and do that add PS type names to kind of fake a type. So you can't use it for like live C# types or anything like that if you want to test, methods and that kind of thing. But if you're just querying an API and looking at certain properties came back, it's great for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that when I went to PowerShell on the river, you see Janusko was there and she did a presentation on Pester, and that was one of the things she was showing was creating like you said, a PS custom object to return back for using in the test.
Yeah, so basically the design of a test for a particular command, it should test the input types and essentially the output type. Is that right, Justin?
I mean, I would argue that you only test your outputs. Your input should be tested by your input validation on your script. But, like your tests are, when you do it should be this, you're sending with that a certain input, and then you're expecting a certain output. And so you're testing your output based on a certain input. I don't really see how you would test an input per se, because you're creating it as part of that setup.
Right.
So when you said test inputs, do you mean like test different parameter combinations, or?
Yeah, which, as you said, it's kind of stupid if you have the validate attributes all set up, because they're not going to be able to not do that anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, typically, the way that my tests look will be like, I'll have a command that, like, let's say, calls an API and expects a certain result. And so the way that those tests will look will be like, works with the basic input, what a basic user would try to do. Then works with a complex input where I'm trying all the parameters and an object with multi-valued things, and then another like works with this particular combination. And then if I add a new parameter, works only with this combination, those kind of things, like testing the inputs to the command, make sure they match the outputs. That's kind of one of those functional programming kind of tenets. And then that's assuming that like you write your functions so that they don't carry state, that they're not reading from like global scripts or anything like that. If they're just simple inputs to outputs. If you have something where there's a state in between, then you have to mock that state, or you have to test that state, test that state doesn't have everything. It makes things a little more complicated. Right. But if you like, say like you're maintaining a session, you write a module and it connects and then it maintains a session in a script variable. You're going to have some different tests around that. Like, does it work if does it fail? The other thing I test in addition to that is like, does it fail safely if certain things aren't right? Like, does it fail correctly if the session isn't established? Does it fail correctly if if I send it incorrect input? Like, you can try sending incorrect input and then making sure that your script validation works by testing for a particular exception. Like, that is a valid test.
Yeah. Like one of the things I've done, I've built basically a mapping file in JSON from all of the specific Twitter error codes and HTTP errors and the exceptions that I want to throw.
So that would be a great example for like the test cases function. Like, you can also just make a loop into them, but there's an option in Pester called test cases where you could just build a hash table that's like, test that if this error comes back from Twitter, my thing handles it by sending this exception, and like that, and test for all those. And then you could just write the actual process of the test once, and then you use that test cases thing to go through all those different tests. So test if it returns 302, tested if it returns 501, that it sends this message, tested if it returns 505, that it sends this other message, that kind of thing. And there's all kinds of documentation on that as far as test cases. They are very different from how they worked in 4 and 5. That's another breaking change. But test cases are great for that kind of thing. When you want to kind of run the same test, but you want to try it with a bunch of different permutations.
Gotcha. Sorry, gotcha.
Since they're probably not going to be able to do the conference in Redmond next year, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. They're talking about doing like a 3-day event. Yeah, interesting. I enjoyed some of the presentations they had for the PowerShell 24. That's they did the same thing with this puppetized thing I was talking about watching last week. They started in the Asia and ran through Europe and then the Americas. So they ran around the clock.
I think it was able to only join one of those for that 24-hour.
I got most of them posted out there. That's what they were suggesting today was you doing a presentation with the Bluebird module.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That would be fun for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So like there's 67 different Twitter error codes. So yeah. And the thing is, not all of those were on the same documentation page. The Twitter documentation is just crazy. You would think that for one parameter that they would have used that same description for that parameter for all of the endpoints, but you can tell that there's probably 10 different teams that worked on the endpoints, and they all had just a little bit different, verbiage on that.
Thing about those large companies, your entire job can just be working on one very small cog in the entire wheel.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool that the one of the Twitter developer advocates reached out and said he was going to play around with the module and told me to go out and submit it on their SDK community forum, whatever, so people there could grab it and check it out. That was neat.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
I mean, the whole point of writing something is so someone could use it. And, I've got one particular use case. I know Jonathan had a particular use case. And we came up with another one, I guess, possibly for the PS Follow Friday. We could have, say 3 or 4 of us could have a Twitter list with, PowerShell users that we want to let people know about following or whatever, and then we could write something that runs like on Friday to pull from all of those lists and then get a random sampling, and then tweet it and be done with it. We wouldn't have to, because it's like sometimes I feel like, man, I gotta go and look at all the people that's posted for PS Follow Friday, because I don't necessarily want to grab the same ones that they've grabbed. So now I've got to kind of filter out, well, what's been, who's been, who's had the spotlight shined on them, kind of thing. So, I mean, we want to shine spotlights on other people besides those.
That's kind of funny. I was thinking about that yesterday, because I've got the list of, I think the list I have has about 70 people on it. And I was thinking about that yesterday. It's like, yeah, I should come up with some sort of module that can just randomize, pull a list of 5 people out of that list.
Yeah, for like a Twitter list?
Sorry?
You mean a Twitter list or just?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I have just a text file that has all the people I've used for the PS Follow Friday.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, so I had a brief thought about, well, I should randomize that and just put together a list and just rotate through that. There's got to be enough there for 3 months or 4 months worth of PS Follow Friday, so.
Gotcha. So, does anybody want to see code or anything like that? I mean, do we want to get into anything like that? I know it's been close to an hour, but
Well, I'm good. If you wanna take 5 or 10 minutes and show us something, I think we're all good.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
yeah. Let's see. Where's the... Yeah, okay, so I'm just sharing the GitHub, right?
Yeah, I can see that on the screen.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to try to I guess go through the best practice on the scaffolding and things like that. So we've got the repo, and then all the meat, all the PowerShell is actually inside this project folder, or the module name. And again, like I said, I built it. I have a build script that compiles everything in. So this PSM1 is just very, very basic. This I got added this last night because Jeff found out that, or told me that the $env home is not set on all Windows, and I made an assumption because it was set on my laptop. In any case,
Dave, could you zoom in a little bit?
oh yeah.
Ah, perfect. There we go.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing what it looks like, so you just tell me what I need to do as far as the sizing and everything. Yeah, so this this thing failed, and then because this failed, everything else down below kind of failed, all the pathing. So this is where it's going to save all of the, like, your credentials and some of the resource like configuration, this Twitter configuration. So according to the API documentation, you're supposed to go out and grab like the configuration, which includes like how many, the length of what URLs is going to be shortened to from the TCO. That may or may not change, but they suggest doing it daily. So that's why I've got like this in so far. This isn't actually in use. It's just here so far. And same thing like on the languages, you can specify languages in certain other, going to be able to specify in certain other commands. At least this will have the languages which are supported. And this is one of the things that I like doing a lot is creating a list and creating output that I show the stuff that I sent to the information stream also goes into this Twitter history list. And I've got a command that will open that up, or that will display that. And I decided to go ahead and like on my public, I wanted to separate it between the API calls, and most everything in here is API call, and then my helpers. The helpers is the stuff that does not actually touch Twitter. So this Twitter API endpoint, this basically shows, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute, but because the Twitter documentation is kind of crap, I go through and built my own after the fact. So if someone wants to see, well, what does that what does that API endpoint look like? I can, I'll give you a, here's everything that the documentation has, the parameters and all of that stuff. And then, what command it is in and things like that. The Twitter history is pretty simple because, like I said, I just dump everything into this module-based variable, and again, fairly straightforward on that. So if we go back to the API helper, I've got these kind of separated out, not necessarily by the resource, but just by, I guess, what I thought. This is how Twitter kind of separates things. So they put users, followers, and friends together. So if we look at this authentication, when you import the module, this runs and it will try to import the credentials file. If it fails, it will it'll tell you like it's missing one or more value. I validate that the JSON, the encrypted JSON, has essentially these values, these fields. So if the JSON doesn't have the fields, it'll crash. If it can't unencrypt, it'll crash. And also, if it's not set at all, it'll give you this, please use set Twitter authentication to set the required API keys and secrets. Use the persist switch to save the values to disk, which you'll probably always want to do that, but I gave them out if people didn't want to. The set Twitter bearer, actually it's its own call. It's not even using the private API that I set up because of what it's actually doing and what I needed to get. Actually, I probably could have. I ended up not. I may switch it later. In any case, this response data, and I also see. Oh no, I'm doing it right. So this response data I get back. I usually have something like this from any of the direct API calls, and then I've got the right Twitter response that will take everything in, convert it. It'll send information to an output stream, save it to the history, and then also output the results. But this is I'm basically, this thing creates sends your information, your API key and the secret, and you get a bearer token. The bearer tokens are not used yet, but they're going to be used for the V2 commands. Right now, everything in Twitter's V11. We've also got like a test Twitter authentication, so it just basically goes out, make sure that everything works. And then this export basically say, like if you did not save it to the file, you could save it to the file with this. And this convert to string, convert to JSON, convert to string, and all that. This is kind of what makes it happen. Feel free to ask questions as I'm going. I'm just trying to kind of blaze through this. And if we go back over here, we can see like this is secure string. Also, all of these read prompts is as secure string. And this does the conversion. It tests to see if what you've given it is valid. And if it is, and you have the persist, it'll export. So this is sort of goes back to the tenet of get your functions to do one thing and do that one thing well. So the testing to see if these credentials are valid is that. Exporting is another. So I kept those separated. The media. So far, there's only just one command, but you can add alt image text to it. And these are the types of images that you can send to it. So whenever you send it, I guess whatever category you set it's tagged for that only. So you couldn't send it as a tweet image and then use it as a direct message image. But this is pretty complex. There's multiple calls in here. And all of this is just sort of validation at this point to make sure that it's, if it's video, it's got to be less than 512 meg. And if it's an image, it's less than 5 meg. If it's a GIF, less than 15 meg. And then we read the file. Again, each one of these, like this is an ed phase, this is a pen phase. This comes straight out of the Twitter documentation. And each one of these things, like this actually has a private function called get send media status. And I'm using the get Twitter history because when I set this alt image, I want to make sure that it was successful, and an easy way to do it was just look at the history, assuming that this doesn't blow up. If it blows up, you're not going to get, the image isn't going to have the alt image on it anyway, or the alt text. The resources that I have is this. I just realized that. Nope, there they are. Yeah, the endpoints. And let me show you the endpoints. So this is the JSON that I created. This is like my own schema. So this says the endpoint itself, and then this is the essentially the parameters there. Like what API version it is, what method. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to be able to provide the API reference so people can actually dig further. And I wanted to capture like what URI. If all of this was set up before I even started, if Twitter's provided something like this, I wouldn't have had to have gone through less trouble, and it could have been scripted, but it's not. So there we are. Anyway, so each one of these things had to go through like this send Twitter media. So there's multiple endpoints here. This was a lot of copy and pasting, guys, because you can't assume that a table in the Twitter API documentation has the right data in the right columns. And what else? I guess the neat thing I like is sort of the build script. Of course, right now I'm not using any third-party module to do building. But that's probably going to happen. Probably using Saki or something like that. Anyway, essentially, when I create the module that's going to be put into PowerShell Gallery, this thing, you'll run this thing prior to that to build everything out in this build output folder. Yeah, so output folder, and it's going to have the module version in it. And it'll just start gathering up everything. So it'll create the folder. It'll copy the root module, that PSM1, into that, and I'm going to start appending to that. So here are the folders that's going to be appended. So all classes, private, public, and append. The append I had to put in there because, let me just get back over to that. Because again, I wanted to have something happen after everything. I had to have these things defined, since I'm not doing an actual export module member or anything like that. I'm just letting it do its own thing from the module manifest. I needed this to be at the very end of the PSM1, and that's how I ended up having to do that. Or, I mean, there might be a better way, but that's how I was able to fix it. And of course, right now there's not any formats or types. Jeff was really wanting some of these things to happen, and it might happen eventually. So grabbing all the supporting folders, basically, if it's not in the stuff that I'm going to append to the root module, I'm just going to copy it directly. And then I built something that's going to compile those API endpoints into a single JSON file that's going to be pulled in later. And I'm using Platypus to create the external help. I don't have comment-based help in my functions. The functions are just the content of the PowerShell. And then I build out these docs, which have basically, again, through using Platypus, which creates these things. And if we look at raw, that's kind of what it looks like. Oh, that's horrible there. Anyway, so, I had to fill these things out. And this was one of the tweets that I did a few days ago, being so tired about that. And so once that doc is built, I also added for Jeff the about help, and I had to create that as well. Then I build the things for the module manifest, like the full file list, and pretty much the last thing I do is create a new module manifest on the fly, as opposed to using something that I put in there. So module manifest for mine is very, very simple, kind of trimmed down. I kept these in. I probably could have removed them, but I kept them in. So most of these things I'm going to replace anyway. So there's no reason for me to put anything in here. And also I've got something that can read my Git log to and also pull against GitHub to get all of these issues that's created out there. And then, as you can see, I've got the Git log, sorry, the change log, and all the documentation lives out on that. So that's pretty much it on the build. I know this is like really fast, and I guess one of the things I could show you is I made all of these bit.ly links, so they'll be a little easier to find. So all those docs that you saw over there are basically now online, and I can do online help for these as well. Like, so it's going to take you right through that. At the bottom, I've got all the other links. So I have the API documentation list, here as well, so you can go out and see. Yeah, that was fun. So this is obviously bad pasting, because that should be a get user show, not what came up. What came up was this guy. Yeah, so copy pasting, I got to fix. The cool thing about this is my documentation is not based on or at least this documentation is not based on the PowerShell Gallery version, module that's there. So if I go back here, I can update any docs in this and then do a merge request into a docs branch, and then the read the docs will get that and start working on it. So this uses CI, basically CI/CD to build out these docs, and eventually the module itself will be built this way. And I added this because whenever you create your application, you need to make sure that you have it set. Basically, it needs to have read, write, and direct message. I don't think that Jeff's had the rights for direct message, so you had to go back through, update his application, and regenerate his keys. And I think that's probably it. Like, again, this changelog looks pretty nice when it's out, decked out, and this links to the particular commit in GitHub. So that's a particular commit. Anyway, also tags in GitHub. This has got the zip file attached to each one. That's probably it.
Just wow.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So much.
It's a lot.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything new, PowerShell wise or .NET wise, doing this?
Yeah. So I guess
Any new tricks?
The big thing is like how to secure and store something locally, like this set. So this was something that I felt was pretty big, because I didn't want to just share or save anything out, raw text or anything like that. And then this uses the DPAPI or whatever that is, data protection API, and I know they have something like that for Mac, like I'm on now, or Linux as well.
Well, the next thing to look at is integrating it with the new secrets module, to where you can store it and then store the stuff in the different vaults that are going to be available for it.
Yeah. Possibly.
It's something else for you to put on your plate.
Yeah, so tests are going to be on my plate. API v2 endpoints are going to be on my plate. I want to have a different build. Like this guy's this is just like a helper function. It's only used during the build process. And this is where I'm pulling in everything as a hash table, and making sure that I can merge all those different JSON into a single JSON. That was kind of interesting. What else? So I hadn't pushed anything in my Posh Events module, and when I started building this with Read the Docs, it was failing, and I was using the exact same thing, the exact same make docs here for the most part. It was failing, and then I tried, well, let me just see if Posh Events works, and well, it failed too. So one takeaway was, when you don't touch something and you rely on third parties, you're gonna probably, you should anticipate that third parties are going to continue evolving, changing, and all of that. So you want to make sure that you kind of keep up with everything. Like there was some, like maybe 6 months ago or whatever, they changed something that where these now is called icon instead of tags or whatever they were called, and this was what was failing, and I didn't know that. Any case, so if you rely on something third party, always keep up with it. Like, if you build something on Pester 4, you need to always be aware of what's coming down the pipe for Pester. Because the thing is, if you're given decent enough time in warning, and good developers are going to try to do that, PowerShell guys too, then you should have enough time to convert your stuff or to make your stuff not break whenever they update things. So yeah, update stuff. So the class, this is like probably the most significant piece. I built the class so I could dump stuff into it in, like the instance of it from the front end command, like, get Twitter user, and then send it to the commands that's actually going to run against the API. And the way I'm doing it allows for, I made it to where I could allow this to be mocked up, because I knew that I needed to basically inject specifics in here. Like this nonce is something that's very nondescript, and if they're set as none, then I've got something that's going to automatically generate one and also get the Unix time if they don't provide the time. So I have this mostly so I can do the mock. So I'm trying to build it somewhat intelligently so I can be prepared to start doing more things with it without having to change this much. The other piece was, and this is sort of how I typically do things, like this invoke Twitter request is the thing that actually does the connection to the API, to Twitter itself. There may be some commands that use cursor requests or page requests. And we just look at the cursor request. All I'm doing is doing a do loop, looping through, removing the cursor that comes back, and then getting a new cursor. It's the way like APIs does pagination kind of thing. One of the ways, and the other way is the actual page, and that's what that one does. But mostly all of those are just calling this guy, and this is where I'm getting the header string. I'm going to send it through. I'm updating the form of the body, and I'll make the call here. And you see I'm just outputting it straight to the pipeline. But when it gets done, I am taking the response data that I got and putting it into this variable, which I'm then sending to this write response. So this invoke Twitter request is not responsible for formatting the data at this point, and it's not responsible for like saving anything pretty much anywhere. It's just sending it down the pipeline. So this write Twitter response here, we get this information, and I'm doing the get PS call stack. This is kind of cool to see where you're at in the command. And these are the things I don't necessarily care about, but this will get the command name that's actually happening. So for instance, if I go here, actually, I think I've got the module already up on this guy. I'll just do last. I have not connected to Twitter. Okay. And this is just the raw JSON that comes back, and it's just I'm letting the invoke REST method do what it wants to do. And now let's look at the Twitter history, and this is where this comes in. So this is the command, tells you what you sent. So just to make sure that this is kind of how I'll do some checking to make sure that that my command is working correctly. Tells you how long it takes. Tells you your rate limit for this particular endpoint is 900, and this is how many I've left. And then this is the actual response from Twitter. And this, if we do information, action continue, actually not this one. So if we do that, this is all that's being set, right? So this is the information piece, information stream. I like information stream because you can tuck data in that people may want to know, and they don't have to see it if they don't want to. Then if they go like 5 minutes down the road, oh wait, I forgot, what did I run, a few minutes ago? The one thing I don't have in this history is a time when it was executed. This is the reset time. So I might actually add when it was executed. And when I import the module, this is just a session variable. It'll get dumped. So there's nothing long term yet. If people want that, then I could put that in. So in any case, you can get it using bit.ly link. This is the PowerShell gallery, or you can look at the docs, or if you want to look at the repo, or if you got a bug request, bug report, or a feature request. That's that. Any questions? I took way too much time. I know I did.
That's all good.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it a night. But no, Dave, that was great. I'm glad to see a peek into what you're doing there and learn a few things. And
Okay.
it's been very interesting.
Thank you. And like I said, I want this to be a module for the community, and the community needs to be able to respond, not respond, but provide information like Jeff's popped these in. Yeah. Anywho, that's all for me. I'm gonna stop that share.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that.
It kept us together for a little bit.
Thanks to everybody that shared information tonight, Justin and others. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like, Justin, you're like way above me on this stuff. I mean,
well, he must be in the stratospheres compared, because you're like miles above me, so he must be in the stratosphere.
What's most important is you made it work. I mean, half my stuff doesn't work, so I'll just I'm done with this. I'm bored, and I go on to something else. So that's my weakness.
I know I'm never going to be a programmer. That's not what I do for a trade. But there are times I have to write stuff, and I'm just trying to improve and learn any tricks I can. I have a developer at work I call on frequently to guide me if I'm going the wrong way.
I've actually written a C# PowerShell module. It just converts temperature. like from Kelvin to Celsius, Fahrenheit, and what was the other one? Rankine or whatever that.
Who was
that
it
is.
did? Who was it did the presentation at Redmond a couple years ago about writing your own C# modules, and I followed his stuff, and I wrote just a test one just to learn how to do it. I thought that was cool.
And what's really neat about it too is that like you could write hybrid modules. I mean, you can, if you have a particular class or type or something that you just need to do fancy stuff in C#, you could just write that class and then have it as part of your process output as an assembly, and then include that in a PowerShell module, and then just type it in. You can even put this C# code directly in your PowerShell code, and then type it in from a string or a script block. And I do that all the time for like little things, like especially when I'm doing a lot of like asynchronous stuff with HTTP client, like to try to do that in PowerShell is just like, lines and lines and lines of code to try to send out those requests and then wait for them and then bring them together and just be able to use async, await in C#. And this is all like just stuff I've learned in like the last couple months learning Blazor and Blazor WebAssembly, because the main reason I started doing it was there's this French guy who really went off the deep end, and he figured out a way to get PowerShell to work in Blazor WebAssembly, which if you don't know what that is, it's just basically WebAssembly is this thing in browsers where they now basically have like a bytecode engine that anybody can write things for. So what Blazor is the ability to run C# in the browser. So if you want to see an example of this at work, I have my Azure Price XYZ. It's a completely client-side thing that runs C# in your browser. And everything there, like I didn't write one piece of JavaScript to make this site that I just posted. It all works completely in C#. And so the idea is that eventually, probably with 7.2, is that you'll be able to run the PowerShell engine in that same WebAssembly. So you can have the browser running PowerShell. He has, let me see if I can find that example, but he has a working proof of concept. It's really cool. It's Flavian. But yeah, I just kind of went down the deep end with that because Azure static websites are so easy to build, and they use Azure functions on the back end, which I know really well. And as of now, they're free. So like that site, all the bandwidth, all the Azure functions, executions, everything is free. I haven't seen a single dime hit my account from that website.
Yeah, I've been watching your threads on this, and this was very interesting. The fact that the way you're running code in the browser, and like you said, you didn't write any JavaScript.
So here's his version of it. So you'll see here, like, so when you see this, like, you can debug your browser, but like, it's not going to the server running PowerShell and bringing it back. This is PowerShell running literally inside your browser on Chrome or whatever you have. And you can see you have a terminal, an editor, module browser, just experiments. But it's really promising. Like the idea that like you can write your websites in PowerShell. If you know PowerShell on the back end, you can run them in the back end and the front end. It's really promising. It's got a long way to go, but it's pretty interesting. So I've been trying to get like the jump on learning the WebAssembly and Blazor side of it, which, like C# just always just terrifies me, but I'm getting a little bit better. And I'm just a learn by doing it. I mean, if you go to my old thing there in the price by region, the price by VM size, that was me just digging around with documents and trying to figure it out. It's actually not that hard. I should probably post the repository for it too. The problem with, the templates have a ton of files, but basically you'll see that it's just in a couple little C# files. It's not a very complex program.
See, all you need now is a Raspberry Pi and a browser. You don't even need a computer anymore. You have a PowerShell in the browser.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else, or should we call it a night?
I'm gonna call it a night. I'm gonna have to get up and go be on call tomorrow.
good luck and hope everything goes smooth. Well, hope there's no jinx happening. So,
All right, good night, guys.
It's been the network guys that did any jinx this week, so well, hopefully it'll only be them. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a good evening.
All right.
that's it.
Thanks, everyone. See you in a couple weeks.